Hello, and welcome to a new edition of Need to Know, a series of video interviews with companies who are shaping, creating, and innovating in the games industry today, and whose work will have a huge impact going forwards into the future. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Dom Sacco, founder of Esports News UK, here to talk to us today about the current trends and challenges in the realm of esports and the benefits of getting involved. Dom, it's lovely to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's good to
Thank
see you.
you for inviting me. Yeah, it's great to be here.
No worries. Before we get going, though, do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about your background and what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my background's in trade journalism. I used to write for MCV magazine, the old trade weekly publication, and at the old publisher Inten Media, which doesn't exist anymore. And from there, I sort of worked my way up through various magazines. I was editor of PC Retail magazine. I worked in that trade environment, and while I was at PC Retail magazine, I could see the rise of esports, of competitive gaming, games like League of Legends and Counter-Strike. And I've really had a passion for it. I've always liked competitive games back in the day, Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo and all of that stuff. And um, I could see the rise of esports, and I noticed that we had leagues like the ESL UK Premiership in League of Legends and Counter-Strike and so on, and they weren't getting much coverage from your IGNs, your GameSpots, your big news publications in the games press. And so I had a little blog at the time, and I started writing about match reports in the ESL UK Premiership, and the community sort of embraced me, and I realised there was a niche here that I'd found of UK esports. So that's my background. I set up Esports News UK, a news publication, about 10 years ago now. And during that time as well, I've done a little bit of consultancy. I've done some events work. I host some esports watch parties and networking events. And I've done some work with the British Esports Federation as well. So I've been doing that over the past 10 years. And yeah, it's great to have seen, esports evolve and develop in that time.
Absolutely, it seems to have come on leaps and bounds, and we're seeing sort of much bigger events taking place more recently, which is really good to see. So I think it'd be really helpful to sort of jump straight in. I mean, do you want to give us your overview of the current state of esports then? Sort of, I guess, particularly in the UK, but perhaps sort of framing it in the context of the wider world as well.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say esports has gone through that sort of honeymoon period. It's gone through the gold rush phase, so to speak. And it has been in a bit of a period of consolidation over the past 2 years or so, I'd say. We've sadly seen a few closures in recent years, just as we've seen in the wider games industry as well. We've had the job cuts over the past few years. I'm hoping we're starting to see a bit more stability come through now. I feel like we've got through that difficult period, and we can be a little bit more positive in the next few years. But we've seen the closure of events like Insomnia Gaming Festival, which is part of the staple of grassroots esports here in the UK. Yeah, we've got lots of other great businesses as well. Shout out to Epic Land and events like that are still going strong. But yeah, we've had esports teams, some esports teams closing. Well-known ones in the UK like M&M Gaming, Into the Breach. We've had the London Royal Ravens in Call of Duty moving out of the UK and focusing on the US and so on. So we've seen some mergers, we've seen some consolidation, and a lot of those leagues and teams and products that I wrote about when I set up Esports News UK in 2015 don't really exist anymore. We're in a different phase now, and I feel like, the big are getting bigger. I think esports will always be around. We've got some great publishers in the space. You Riot Games, Valve, of course, Ubisoft, and so esports will still be around in the future, but it's going through that consolidation phase at the moment. And we've been through some of those mergers, those layoffs, and so on. But we've got a good ecosystem, I think, in the UK. We've got a fantastic collegiate space. I mentioned British Esports, but also they do collegiate stuff. But at the university level, we've got NSE, we've got Newell University Esports. And then we've got like your tier threes, tier twos, and going up to the tier one. Tier one tends to be more like European based. So if you look at League of Legends, we have the NLC, which is the Northern League of Legends Championship for the UK, Ireland, Nordics, and Malta. And then above that, you have the EMEA Masters, and then above that, you have the League of Legends European Championship. So we do have good structure, I feel like, in esports now, especially over the past decade or so. Um, but the sustainability is that's the tricky part, when people say to me, oh, esports is great, Dom, you've got these big multi-million-dollar prize pools and sell out stadiums, sell out events. It's like, yeah, it's this lovely, flashy, bright lights, and there is money in esports, but it tends to be with the big professional players and
Hmm.
streamers and content creators, the big ones, and the publishers, who, if you want to look at it a little bit cynically, esports is a marketing vehicle for their video games. The ads they would have run in magazines decades ago, you've now got this always happening esports product, which, keeps the gamers interested in that game, buying new skins, buying new season passes, and so on. So yeah, I feel like I don't think the bubble's popped. I think it's shrunk a little bit, and hopefully we can get a bit more stability in the next few years. And so that's a little bit in the UK, but talking wider as well. And I'll come on to um, that in a minute when we talk about like the trends in esports as well. I'll talk a little bit globally.
Definitely. I think it's interesting that there are sort of certain, like you say, trends that are sort of present in the games industry and being sort of almost reflected in the esports industry as well. Do you want to sort of talk through some of those trends? I mean, especially when it comes to the rest of the world, and also maybe as well, obviously sort of with a finger on the pulse of all things in the UK, it's quite interesting from my perspective to see universities offering esports courses. I think it'd be really helpful to understand some of the trends around that as
Yeah,
well.
100%. So I've got five trends here. I'll start with education, as you've mentioned it, and I do think education is one of the strengths in UK esports as well. We've got some good infrastructure here, some good courses. So on that education point, then yeah, over the past, I'd say 4 to 5 years, we've really ramped up esports in education. Whether that's degree courses in esports, usually there's a focus on sort of like business and events management. Um, but we have had a few others as well. And British Esports partnered with Pearson, the education's provider. Yeah, probably about 5 years ago or so now. And they have collegiate courses. They have their BTEC in esports courses, and they've just recently announced coaching qualifications as well, esports coaching qualifications that are online. So those B Tech, I don't have specific numbers, but last time, about a year ago, there was at least 200 colleges teaching. It could be way, way beyond that now. Um, and you have various different providers that are providing those B Techs, but then also globally, education. I've just seen esports ramping up. I've seen um, facilities at universities in America and all around the world offering esports and having, collegiate tournament programs as well, so that their students can represent those universities and colleges at that level. So education is a big one. Um, and I will say on that education note as well, it's not just esports. I know that the government recently announced a scheme where they're looking to fast track cyber people in esports and cyber backgrounds with digital skills into cyber defense roles. So, education is really key here in that digital sphere, not just esports. I mean, esports is one part of that. Other trends, then, I think if you're looking at esports as a gamer and as a viewer, co-streaming is a big trend at the moment. So we're seeing these big streamers like Cadril who will broadcast the esports broadcast and add their commentary to it and add their personal touch to it as well. And Cagel, for example, he's getting more views on his streams than the official League of Legends Riot Games broadcasters. Really,
Wow.
that is really ramping up. at the moment.
Mm.
And we're talking, hundreds of thousands of viewers. The NLC, the EMEA Masters finals, I think recently had around 500,000 viewers, and a lot of that came from the co-streaming from Cagel Stream. So that's a trend. Third one, diversity. We've seen in recent years more tournaments specifically for women and marginalized genders, like Valorant Game Changers and the Equal Esports Cup in League of Legends and ESL Impact in Counter-Strike. And I think we're going to see more of that in the future. I think reaction to that has been largely positive, but I don't want to speak for women because I'm not a woman. But from those I've spoken to in the space, generally most of them like to have that safe space for women and marginalized genders. But there are some out there who really want to see more mixed esports tournaments because esports is mixed. It's not like football where it's segregated. You have men's football, you have women's football. Esports is technically mixed. If you have a woman who, is good enough to be in that top bracket in those top teams, that can happen. And we have seen that in some games like Hearthstone, I think Overwatch and a few others where we've had some top tier women. Actually, in Counter-Strike recently at Into Extreme Masters Katowice, we had a um, Imperial, I think it was Imperial Valkyries, who made it to IM Katowice. They were the first all women's team to make it there. So that's more of a trend. And then the two other ones, I mean, I mentioned consolidation, so I won't really go into that again, but some have dubbed it the esports winter because, and a bit of background behind that is that, um, you know, I mentioned that gold rush phase of the 2010s. A lot of investors came in pumping money into esports at that point. Um, seeing the shining lights and looking for a return on investment. And sadly, that return on investment didn't really come in general because a lot of the revenues for esports teams come from sponsorships. It's not like football where you have match day tickets, home and away
Mm.
matches, merchandise that sells really well. Yes, we have merchandise in esports. It's not really super lucrative unless it's, with maybe some of those bigger teams like your FaZe Clans and um, people like that. So, and because of that return on investment didn't come, we've seen that downsizing, we've seen those mergers and some of those closures. But, it's easy to look at that with negatively. We're still having like record viewership. We're still having this passion of the community that I don't think will ever go away. And then the fifth trend, and some would say probably the biggest one that's happened in the past few years, is the rise of Saudi Arabia in esports. And they launched the Esports World Cup, the first one last year in 2024, with I think a $40 million plus prize pool. It's returning again for 2025. They bought one of the biggest or two of the biggest esports tournament operators a couple of years ago. I think it was start of 2021 or start of 2022 in
Mm.
ESL and Faceit to form the ESL Faceit group, and that's
Yes.
purely owned by Savvy Games Group, which is owned by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. So, this sort of monopoly that's coming in now, we're seeing this, and then the Esports World Cup attracted many of the top players. They've got partnerships with big games publishers and so on. So I know I've waffled a little bit there, Leo, but those are my five sort of main trends, I'd say, in esports at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really interesting, and there are sort of certain sort of similarities kicking around. So yeah, no, it's really, really helpful to understand. I mean, I think it'd be helpful as well. I mean, some of these trends sort of represent challenges, obviously, to the esports industry. But are there any other sort of specific challenges that the industry as a whole might be sort of facing collectively right now in
Yeah,
terms
it's a
of
good
esports?
question. I do, for me, there's that one word that comes back as it's sustainability, which is
Mm,
tied in
yeah.
with the whole consolidation aspect, obviously. That sustainability is key. I think some people have said to me, well, what will happen, Dom, if, for example, Saudi Arabia or some of these big publishers get bored of esports, quote unquote? I think esports will revert back to the grassroots days of, the 90s or whatever it was, the 2000s or so on, of the LAN gaming meetups. And, maybe not arcades as such. Arcades aren't quite as popular as they used to be. But I think we will, like I said earlier, I think esports will always be around. It's really, you've got that community strength that will always be behind it, even if parts of that community don't always agree with the decisions made by those
Mm.
decision makers and so on. So yeah, for me, it's sustainability. Finding the million dollar question has been how does an esports team generate revenues and attain real profitability? It's been tough. You
Mm.
know, some have. There's been a few, but it's and like I say, some teams out there like your Fanatics of the world and Giant X are very good with uh, their sponsorship, bringing on partners and their merchandise and so on. You know, between those two organisations who are headquartered in UK, Giant X also has headquarters, also has a base in Spain as well. You know, they're two very good examples of organisations that have managed to get those partnerships in. But you know, yeah, we've seen salaries decrease in general in some games. We've seen teams pulling out of certain games like Rocket League because these teams are just finding it hard to be sustainable. I think that is the biggest challenge, and it's also how the games publishers. The challenge for them is finding these, you know, good partnerships and structures between the esports teams to allow them all to lift the ecosystem together. And games publishers have tried various different means over the years. You know, they've tried franchising leagues, they've tried various revenue share agreements. Um, it's not for want of trying, but I still feel we haven't found that, you know, this real what's the word I'm thinking of here? This future where everyone is aligned and sustainable. You know, that is the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's yeah, it's clear that it is a challenge, and I suppose other sort of similar industries, thrive on sort of brand sponsorship and like you say, ticket sales and things like that. Whereas, yeah, I suppose until you get into the sort of final stages, some of that is a little bit difficult to muster for teams.
Yeah, I mean, one of my most common questions I get people coming to me saying, Dom, can you introduce me to one of your sponsors that you've had with Esports News UK? I don't have like that many. I have a fine, or I had a finite number. So that's again another question, especially at the grassroots level. How can we get sponsorship? How can we be
Yeah.
sustainable? It's well,
Mhm.
you might be at a grassroots level, but you're still technically competing with all of those bigger organizations, you know, for the same pot of sponsorship money, which can only go so far. So that
Yeah.
is a tough point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, thinking of some of the sort of positives, though, I mean, how would you sort of see the games industry being able to tap into the passion that's present within the esports community? I mean, obviously, it presents sort of marketing opportunities and partnership opportunities. I mean, how would you talk about that? That'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you can do it. I think it comes down to finding a good partner or, you know, group in the community who is authentic and understands esports. I'll give you an example. Special Effect, the games industry charity, do a great job of tapping
Absolutely.
into esports and the streaming community and the streaming culture as well with their Game Blast annual fundraiser. And I know so many other charities have looked at that and tried to emulate it. And it is just reaching out. You know, it sounds so simple, but instead of working behind the scenes and trying to figure out esports that way, just put a post out there on social media. Hi, we're company X or Y. We're looking to do to engage more with the esports community, or we'd like to, you know, run a little tournament or raise money for charity or whatever it is. Reach out to the community. Can anyone help? Please retweet and send. And that's what the community likes. They like to be involved. They like to be a part of these campaigns or whatever it is. That's the first step, just reaching out, not being afraid to reach out. Because I think if you're genuine and you have a good idea and you really want to engage with the community will work with you closely. If you try to do things your own way, oh, we figure out esports, we understand it, and announce something that isn't quite right,
Yeah.
the community will see through that, and
Mm.
you'll be hit with those memes of how do you do, fellow kids, and those kind of things. So take
Yeah.
the time to reach out. The community will be more than happy to help you. If they can see you don't understand something about esports and you want to learn more about it, they like that. They like
Yeah.
that you're asking rather than trying to do it yourself. So esports is all about the community. So reaching out to people. I mean, if you want to promote your brand to a certain demographic, there are so many different groups. You can look at certain streamers and so on. But if you don't have a big budget for a big streamer or content creator, you can always look at these different communities, like we mentioned, NSE and Null or specific universities. You might be a small games dev based in a certain region in the UK or Ireland or wherever, and you might have a local college or university that has esports teams. Reach out to them. Try and engage with them. You know, um, with my journalism background as well, it'd be maybe remiss of me not to say considering publications as well. There are still some good esports publications out there and games publications. But esports teams as well. If you might have an esports team that's located near you. Endpoint, for example, are based in Sheffield. A lot
Mm.
of people think esports, we've got the big events happening in London, but there are good little hubs around the UK. Endpoint in Sheffield, you've got British esports in Sunderland. Um, there's if this event that's trying to get done in Liverpool, I think, at the moment. So you know, reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out on social media or in your local area and try and look for people with, years of experience in esports or that passion and authenticity to work with you and promote what you're doing.
Absolutely. I think the games industry itself sort of thrives on authenticity and engagement. So and also, community is crucial these days.
Mm.
So super important stuff. I think okay, interesting. So maybe do you want to talk about sort of the future of esports, what's next, and what the future holds, perhaps?
Yeah, I always say to people, you know, esports is so fast moving. It's incredibly difficult to predict what's going to happen. If you look some of the biggest esports now, Valorant, that barely existed 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's one of the top shooters competing with Counter-Strike. Fortnite seemed to emerge overnight almost. I remember when that blew up years ago, and we've had a few new games knocking on the door in recent years, like Supervive and things like that. Um, you never know. I always say expect the unexpected in esports. So, be ready for what may happen. I do think we're due a new game or two in the next few
Mm,
years to maybe rival some of those established games. But those established games and that big three, I think will always be around your Dota 2, Counter-Strike, and League of Legends.
yeah.
Um, and I do think we'll see those trends I spoke about develop as well. Co-streaming will continue to rise and rise. Publishers will look at good content creators to partner with there to expand their reach and have good mutual partnerships that benefit everyone. And those trends I mentioned, I think we'll continue to see them increase. More education, more courses in esports, probably bigger prize pools from the Esports World Cup. But don't be surprised if we do see a little bit more consolidation yet. I still don't think we're fully out of the woods yet. So, but we'll always have that passion of the community. I think esports will always be fun. And so, I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer. I don't have the real answers for you or a crystal ball, but I do feel like the worst is over
Mm,
from that consolidation and closures in recent years. Maybe that's my heart speaking more than my head. But please do follow esports if you haven't already. Go watch a Twitch stream, go and have a look around, go and have a look on a League of Legends LEC broadcast, and watch maybe don't watch the Twitch chat actually because you do get a lot of memes in there and nonsense. But maybe go to a smaller stream or a collegiate stream and say hi.
mm.
And yeah. I'm positive for the future.
Good, 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 good. Well, that's really, really good to hear. Yeah, absolutely. I think being able to dip one's toe into esports occasionally is it's helpful and it's healthy. Fantastic. Well,
Definitely.
Dom, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I think there's an awful lot for companies there and individuals alike to consider, especially in terms of sort of the current state of affairs of esports in the UK at the moment, and ultimately how they can get involved. So yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for asking me on, Leo. I hope this has been helpful to anyone watching.
Absolutely, no worries at all, Dom. And yeah, well, thank you again, and thank you today for our audience who've tuned in to catch this video. There's plenty of other need to know videos out there on our Ukie TV channel on YouTube. Thank you for enjoying this one, and more very soon. Thank you so much.